Try and help us understand, why is it in Hamas' benefit, or why Hamas believes that it is in benefit, stalling and deceiving and doing what it is doing?
Yeah, well, that is the question, Ellie. And I think that the hint is we can find it in what the IDF was doing on its side of the yellow line, not only in this incident, but also the same event that triggered Hamas ceasefire violation 10 days ago, in which 2 IDF soldiers were killed. In both of those times, both of them in Southern Gaza, the IDF was destroying terrorist underground infrastructure with machinery, with the IDF Engineering Corps. And what Hamas seems to be saying here is that it's willing to risk going back into combat because it does not want to see Israel destroy the underground infrastructure that it spent years building on the Israeli side of the yellow line. In other words, Hamas is rejecting the idea that Israel, while this ceasefire is continuing, will destroy its infrastructure, Hamas's infrastructure, on the Israeli side of Gaza. We know that Gaza is divided into 2. Let's remind the viewers. And as part of the terms of this truce, which Hamas is violating, Israel has every right to carry out engineering work against underground terror infrastructure on its side. Hamas twice now launched deadly attacks and received major retaliation. Yeah. And I don't think that it regrets anything that has happened. It is trying to tell Israel that if it continues destroying tunnels on its side, we might get even another escalation. This is a huge test for the ceasefire. And this is, I think, what's really going on. This is a lot more substantial than all the other issues that are on the table right now.
If the assumption... and it's
another thing I would point out is how similar, again, in terms of operations, Hamas terrorists came out of a tunnel, both in this incident and the incident 10 days ago. This is the hardest kind of attack to stop because while the Air Force provides cover for these IDF positions, and let's remember, these are basically static positions. This is not a good situation to be in from a military perspective when there's combat going on, because that means the enemy can see where the IDF is, and the IDF tries to see where the enemy is. Often it succeeds, but when they come out of a tunnel and launch an anti-tank missile attack, that's a very fast attack. And so, again, the fact that this happened twice in the same area while the IDF was doing the same thing, this is a pattern, and this is not just Hamas testing things. It's actually sending a message. It's trying to tell Israel, don't destroy our tunnels, and hopefully Israel will absolutely disregard that because it has every right to do that.
And if I'm gathering a genuine and strict Israeli commitment not to support or encourage extremist or separatist movements in Syria, and I believe that the latter is also the key one to understand the current situation, Billy.
Well, they are also adding there, the source added to Ariel, that the current policy that Israel holds towards Syria will actually encourage more and more extremism. I'm not sure what role does Israel plays in the jihadism indoctrination that we see in the Syrian schools right now, with many calls against Israel, against the Jewish people in general, and definitely pretty much jihadi rhetoric there. That's something that the Syrian regime is encouraging. They are putting that in the minds of the young kids in Syria. Very worried about the future of those kids in the future, what there will be thinking, what exactly their goal in life will be. So I think that's something that Israel needs to take also seriously. And that's why the current situation is that there is distrust between the two sides. Israel wants relations with Syria. It will be a wonderful achievement for Prime Minister Netanyahu, for President Trump, definitely.
And also for al-Shara.
For al-Shara, I'm not sure about that. It depends exactly. Are we talking about peace right now after the war in Gaza, or are we talking about some security agreements and maybe peace in the future when every other nation in the Arab world does normalize relations with Israel? So this is also very tricky there, but definitely that's in Israel's interest. The issue here is that Israel does not trust Ahmad al-Sharia, and they, I guess, have seen enough from Ahmad al-Sharia since he got into office, if you can call it this way, in order not to trust him.
Mr. Lapin, which element here do you identify as key to understanding the possibility of it actually materializing?
This reference to the 74 armistice, this is actually what's on the table. It's not a peace deal. It's not normalization. It's some sort of stabilization interim agreement, which is the very maximum we might get. We might not even get that, but let's assume that they're moving in that direction. So what would this entail? It would entail two things primarily. First of all, the Syrians, for their part, the new regime would have to commit itself to not moving heavy military equipment, forces, jihadist militias, Turkish-backed units in the Syrian military, which is completely infiltrated by jihadist rebel forces. They were previously part of the rebel movement coalition, and now they're playing a prominent role in this new Syrian army. So none of these forces can move south of Damascus. That's what Israel is saying. And if they accept that, then I think Israel, and partly also to placate the Trump administration, probably would be willing to consider repositioning some of its positions on the Syrian side of the buffer zone, of the 1974 buffer zone, back to the Israeli side. And if we listen to Israeli officials, that would not include the position on Mount Hermon, which is incredibly strategic. That is staying. But there are not, in addition to that, there are 8 other IDF positions on the Syrian side.
And digging them back up. Yes. Then they call over to the Red Cross officials to, quote unquote, witness this discovery. Now, in a rare rebuke, the Red Cross released a statement saying it is, quote, unacceptable to stage a fake rescue, end quote, and that their team had no knowledge of the situation. Back here in studio with us, security analyst Yaakov Lapin. It is Hollywood all over again, but this time it is poking the Red Cross. The Red Cross left with no other option but to acknowledge that they're being bamboozled.
For sure. And, let's look at why Hamas is doing this, right? So there are 2 reasons. First of all, this is evidence that there are at least some of the bodies that it claims it doesn't know where they are. It knows exactly where they are. This is part of their show that they need, all this help in finding it in time. Okay, so we know that they're lying straight out. We have total evidence now. This was the assumption before, but now we have the evidence. And the second reason that they're doing this is because they are trying to make the claim that they need heavy equipment to get to some of these bodies. Why do they want heavy equipment? Well, that also helps them, start to rebuild some of their terror infrastructure. This is dual use. So we see that Hamas was caught, red-handed lying here. It's doing this for tactical reasons. It's doing this for reasons that I think serve its interests. And when I said earlier that it's hard for outsiders to get into the heads of Hamas, this is what I was talking about. I mean, look at this. Look at the effort that they go to this deception instead of just returning a body.
But for me, Mr. Lapin, what stands out is, unfortunately, not Hamas's tactics, but the fact that the Red Cross is forced to acknowledge that this is the reality on the ground.
Yeah.
Publicly.
For sure, and that is remarkable. Look, at the end of the day, there's been a lot of discussion here in Israel about the Red Cross. Ultimately, I don't see them as that important because at the end of the day, I mean, they have very limited things that they can do, and what they can do, they do. And what do we expect?
To pinpoint them, it's like picking up the wrong fight.
I mean, internally, and I say this here, what do we really expect from the Red Cross? The Red Cross and its limitations are just a symptom. The issue here is that Hamas still controls its part of Gaza. When we drill down, everything comes down to that. And so everything else is a symptom of that situation.
Yeah, and this is why asking the right questions is essential in helping us understand reality, because diverting the conversation, for example, as I just tried to do, and focusing on the Red Cross perhaps takes us off the main point. And this is that even after 2 years of war, after this American-mediated truce, Hamas still de facto controls
it's part
the territory.
Absolutely, I agree. But the flip part, and I can't stress this enough, is that we did reach a deal in which every hostage was, delivered alive back to Israel, and Israel controls more than 50% of the Gaza Strip. And for the security of the Western Negev, I think that is a critical achievement, because the alternative would have been a withdrawal to the security perimeter.
And this is a whole...
And this would have been a terrible threat for the Western Negev. I don't think that we could have tolerated that situation.
Keeping our eyes focused on, wouldn't say the prize, but on the ball. Mr. Yaakov Lapin, thank you very much for helping us get a better understanding, for asking the right question.